Welcome to Community Express. I'm Deanna Zachary. Today we talk with Jana Marcus. She's just published a new book called Transfigurations. It's about the journeys people have made from one gender to another. Then a discussion with Dr. Jennifer Hastings. She's helped to start the transgender health program at Planned Parenthood on the west side of Santa Cruz. All this and more up next on Community Express. Today, we're exploring the topic of transgender. It's a term that refers to a person who's born one gender, but they feel themselves to be the opposite gender. Jana Marcus has been a documentary photographer for 20 years. The photographs from her new book, it's called Transfigurations, have been exhibited all over the United States and have won many awards. She's a local Santa Cruz artist who studied at UC Santa Cruz, San Jose State University, and the School of Visual Arts in New York City. Jana, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deanna. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. Tell me, how did you get interested in covering this work about transgender people?
Well, you know, as a documentary photographer, I've always been interested in things that I really don't understand, and I try to find answers for them through the camera. And when I was in graduate school at San Jose State University, it just happened to be at a time when a young man rented a room in my home who was studying feminist theory at UC Santa Cruz, and he lived with me for about 6 months and one day said, "I need to tell you that I was a woman 5 years ago."
Wow.
And that was my first experience of actually meeting a transgender man and hearing their story.
What was your reaction?
I was shocked. I actually had no idea that women could become men, and so I heard his story, he shared it with me, and I kept it with me in my mind as I went off to graduate school and thought, you know, if this is interesting to me, it has to be interesting to someone else. And so I decided to do an investigative documentary on who transgender men were and how they came to develop their identities. And
and yet this book covers women who become men and men who become women.
It expanded. It expanded. It started out just transgender men, and then about 3 years into it, I expanded to transgender women to discover what their concepts of femininity were and their challenges in becoming women in our culture. And packaged it all up into one big show called Transfigurations, and that was the show that started touring in 2006.
And it seems like one thing you're especially interested in is how people conceptualize of the gender that they are becoming or transitioning or they want to be, how they think about what is it to be a man.
When I conducted all of the interviews before I did the photographs, a lot of people would share their stories of transition with me, and after a while they became a little bit the same. So what really stood out for me was their concepts of masculinity and femininity as they were changing genders. Where did those concepts come from? Did they come from the media? Were they influenced by their parents? So those were the stories I tried to pull from the interviews and wanted to be in the book.
And what are the themes that really stood out for you?
You know, a lot of the themes were around people's, well, each story, they're so rich and so in depth, and each person is so different, but some of the really interesting stories were around hormones. You know, when the women would take hormones to become men, a lot of them would talk about how they couldn't cry anymore, that they thought those were learned behaviors that men in our society had, that they were choices. But now that they were on testosterone, they realized that they could not express their frustration through tears. It actually turned to this primal sense of rage. You know, so a lot of people's conversations around what hormones did and how it affected them were really important to hear. It really gives us an idea of how the other gender is. It helps us understand each other as men and women in a way. I mean, here are people who have lived on both sides of the spectrum, and they have such information and a wealth of knowledge to share with us. It's fascinating.
It is, because I think we were of the era where we were taught it's all culture. And so to find out that, no, if you take these hormones, it changes a lot of your relationship to your emotions. And
hormones really shape our lives. It's fascinating. Other things too is learned behavior. There was someone in the book who was a sergeant with the San Francisco Police Department talks about how because he was raised a girl, he never learned the things boys learn in the schoolyard, which is if a man approaches you in a certain way, you need to be prepared to react a certain way. You know, those learned behaviors through childhood, transgender people don't have that experience. So unfortunately, sometimes, as in his case, you have to learn that the hard way, you know. And
he got beat up.
He got beat up right after his transition because he didn't know the signals that other men give to each other.
Like he wasn't manly enough.
It wasn't about being manly enough. I think it was about just when a man approaches you in a certain way, your defenses are up. You have to be prepared. But I'm not a man. I have never had to learn those things, so it's just interesting.
And how do some of the people learn those other ways? Are there courses that you take?
No, you know, it's a journey. Every one of them goes through an amazing journey. Hopefully they have mentors and friends and people who help them. You know, and a lot of people say, you know, I just am who I am. You know, I didn't go through everything I did to pretend. Actually, that's a quote from Stefan, the police officer, which is that he is trying to be his authentic self. And that's a little bit of masculine, it's a little bit of feminine, you know, all rolled in. So
for some transgender people, it sounds like they really want to be the opposite gender, and they still have the idea of maybe two genders, but then there are people who don't even like the idea of that there's two. They feel like there's more, or they're in between.
You know, today, Deanna, transgender is really an umbrella term that stands for so many different things. Transsexual, genderqueer, gender nonconforming. There's a million things out there. So I can't sit here and tell you that one person wants to be this, and everyone's different. You know, some people definitely want to be transitioning to the other sex. Some people want to be more ambiguous and live in between. They don't want to be either. So everyone's story is different. You can't just pinpoint it as one, but we're living in a time when the conversation about gender can happen in a way that it's never happened before. So,
well, and fascinating the way that race and class and gender come together. There was one person that you profile, Dex, in Los Angeles, police officer, was a woman, became a man, and talked about, as a woman, African-American woman, very oppressed in a certain kind of way, and as she transitioned into a man, became feared by people. People didn't want to get in an elevator with him. Just amazing, kind of the levels of, you know, so tell us more about
Yeah, it's a tapestry of stuff, and you know, when we look culture, I try to do a real representation of different ethnic groups, because each ethnic group has a very different experience of being transgender. And so with the African Americans in my book, the transgender men talk about exactly what you said. You know, they used to be black women who spoke their mind and nobody listened. Now they're black men who are feared. You know, that idea of the black man in American culture is still a scary concept to a lot of people, and they talk about how hard it is to just be respected. Also, we see with women of color, you know, the surgeries are incredibly expensive, and so a lot of times we see that women of color wind up working as sex workers to raise enough money to actually be able to pay for their surgeries, you know, whereas in many of the people who are white, upper middle class can afford $100,000 to change their body. So, you know, depending on the ethnic group and where they come from and their economic background, you know, each transgender person's struggle is very different, you know, in terms of getting to the end product.
We've only got a minute or two. How did this book change you and your thinking about identity and gender?
You know, I never really thought about gender in my own personal life before, and so now I feel very awakened to thinking about how we're all sort of trained to sort of be womanly or masculine, or what's right and what's wrong. And now when I apply for a credit card, I'm offended that I have to check a box that says male or female. I actually think about those things now. But it's been an amazing experience for me to have met every one of these people and have their courageous voices in this book. So.
And the photographs are gorgeous. Folks can get the book on your website, JanaMarcus.com.
No, they can get the book at 7angelspress.com. That's 7 the number, and also at the local bookstores.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Deanna.
Yeah, it's been great to talk to you. Up next, Dr. Jennifer Hastings. She tells us about the medical side of transitioning from one gender to another, and about how she helped to start the Transgender Health Program at Planned Parenthood in Santa Cruz. Stay tuned.
Change the channel. Change the channel. Make a sound. Share the echo.
Share the echo and show the world your face. It is your right to seek.
It is your right to receive. It is your right to impart.
The doors of public distribution are constantly changing.
It is our duty to bar those doors from closing.
We will not let our voices be silenced through legislation, through commodification, through the lumbering giants pulling the plug. I believe in public access.
I believe in public access. Stay tuned.
Jennifer Hastings is a doctor at the Westside Planned Parenthood in Santa Cruz. She started a transgender healthcare program there in 2005. Dr. Hastings, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So what made you start this program?
Well, the inspiration for our healthcare program for transgender people really came from one of our medical assistants who had begun her transition several years before and asked me, actually she said, Jennifer, there's no one here in Santa Cruz who can provide health care and who knows about transition and transgender health care. You need to learn. So I was like, all right. So Alejandra Santiago is really the inspiration for all of this, and it's had incredible repercussions. We had no idea. Planned Parenthood Federation of America then became interested, and we wrote the protocols for the National Planned Parenthood. And so really any Planned Parenthood in the United States now, and all because of Alejandra Santiago. It's just really wonderful.
Wow.
So it does require that the individual city or clinic do the work to learn about transgender healthcare. And so if there are people who from other places that are listening to this program, you just go to your local Planned Parenthood and kind of demand it, I think.
Because in the past, if somebody was transitioning, they had to go to special places in big cities, and now what you're saying is, here's a situation where you can get all kinds of different care, and transgender people can go there to kind of a family practice.
Exactly. So I'm a family practitioner, and typically transgender healthcare, as you say, has been either that of a private endocrinologist or a specialist in endocrinology, or one of the special clinics that are in Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Boston. Correct.
Now tell us what you see when people come in. When a man comes in and wants to be a woman, or a woman comes in, one of the first things you do is help them in terms of taking hormone therapies in order to help facilitate the transition. Go ahead.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So I just want to say a little bit about language. So it's not really wanting to be, it's really like who this person feels themselves to be. So in a sense, it's not a choice. I think we use that language for gay and lesbian people, that it is not a choice.
So really they were already the other gender in terms of their understanding of themselves.
Right. The typical or classic story is that someone felt themselves to be a gender that they were not born as, and felt this and experienced this as a child. And this is pretty hard for parents to grasp. And so typically people kind of push it down, and not until later in life feel the energy moving so strong that they have to do something about it. Luckily, things are really changing, and we're having more awareness throughout the country and throughout the world, really, about transgender issues. And so I think parents are more aware now. And so if their child says, no, mommy, you know, I'm a girl or I'm a boy, not the gender that you can tell by my genitalia, parents now will listen more. So I think that's great. And I think having people who are in the spotlight in terms of professional people or movie stars or whatever, I think Chaz Bono is a good example, that really increases awareness and understanding, compassion and understanding.
But you really you work with children, youth who already feel themselves, so it's early. It's not like they hit puberty and start feeling differently, or
right. The typical story is that someone is aware of this as a younger person, and so we're working now to help support children and parents, especially parents, because I think this can be a real shock to families. So Gender Spectrum is a wonderful organization that's based in Berkeley, and they have a lot of resources for parents.
Okay, tell us about some of when people are well, I'm not sure what the words are, but they're starting to take hormones in order to continue to transition, even though they already have.
Exactly.
in their self-understanding. I'm kind of shocked by how strong estrogen and testosterone are.
It's pretty amazing, yes. And so testosterone is a stronger hormone than estrogen. So typically, a person born female, female-bodied, who feels themselves to be male, taking testosterone within a year or two, you would never know that this person was, in fact, born female. And I think that Jana shared that when she first met the person who inspired all her work for Transfigurations, which is such a beautiful book and such an important book, sharing the story of so many people. So testosterone is very powerful. Estrogen is not as strong a hormone, and so the transition from male to female, I think, especially for someone who has already developed male features, is a more difficult process and more difficult to have to look as female. Although electrolysis helps a lot, estrogen does help, and I think also expanding our concepts of male and female is very important. I also want to add that there are people who don't want to transition to, you made a reference this earlier in the show, some people who really feel themselves to be neither male nor female, but somewhere in the middle or somewhere, you know, not wanting to be in a box.
Right.
And I like Jana's, I am also much more conscious about gender now and want to almost check other for gender just to help the movement.
Well, and do you feel on a wider spectrum then? Not just helping the movement, but do you feel on a wider spectrum than just male and female?
Myself? If I had my druthers, I wouldn't have the F. I would like to be somewhere in between. Or that's my self-identity.
Right.
Taking best of all of our genders.
And then people make all different choices. Some people take hormones, some people have surgery, some people don't do any of those things.
Exactly.
And you work with all of them.
Right. And I also wanted to make a comment about the cost of surgery. So it's not just people of color who are disenfranchised and don't have resources for surgery, although that's an extremely important point. People of all races and colors and identities have difficulty paying for
it's a fortune.
Both. The surgeries are very expensive, and I'd say more and more, in part because of the cost, but also because of, I think, an expanding understanding of gender, that I can be, I don't want to be rude here, but a chick with a dick is something that's okay, that a woman can feel female, very deeply female, and have a penis, and that's okay. And likewise, feel male but have a vagina. And I love that broader understanding of gender.
Right.
I think it's really important.
Yeah. And I keep focusing on the hormone side, I think, because in reading about it, it's changed my conception of myself and men, and that it's not just culture that creates the way we express our gender.
Right. So I would echo that testosterone and estrogen really do change kind of your emotional structure, and that was actually kind of hard for me initially, because I wanted to believe that our behavior sort of came from within, from our being, not from a hormone. And yet I would also echo that on testosterone it can be more difficult to cry, you're less intuitive, it's more difficult to multitask. I find that stunning.
It's amazing.
As a reflection on behavior, that it's not all cultural.
And going the other way, if you start to take estrogen,
that you cry more easily, at the movies, that you become more intuitive with your partner. And so many partners stay together. They've been together years and years, perhaps married, children, in a typical heterosexual male-female relationship, and one of the people in the partnership changes their gender so that now, if you're looking from the outside, this would be a lesbian or a gay couple. Partners share that their partner does change in terms of their intuition. Exactly. But I would also add, and this was from a trans man that I met recently, and we had talked hours into the night about behavior and emotions and emotional structure, and he really said as a trans man, it is more difficult for me to cry. I am not as intuitive, but I'm really working on maintaining it, almost like a muscle, like keeping strong, to keep my intuition. I have to practice, and I have to be conscious of working to achieve that.
So, no, we don't have much time, probably moments. How can listeners, viewers, be allies to transgender people?
So important. So I just thank you for asking that question. I think we all can help transgender people and help ourselves by A, not putting people in boxes. If you see someone who doesn't look sort of typical male and female, don't stare, you know, but try to, I mean, do lots of reading. That's what I would also say. Learn about transgender experience. Read Jana's book, Transfigurations. There's another wonderful book called She's Not There, A Life in Two Genders by Jenny Boylan. Trying to learn as much as you can about transgender, and I think respectfully ask. If you're not sure what someone's gender is, just say, what pronoun would you prefer? How would you like me to call you? I think it's respectful, and people appreciate being asked. So not in a like gawky kind of, you're weird, but in a just open way.
Openness.
What's your preferred gender?
Thank you. Thank you so much. The Queer Youth Leadership Awards celebrate brave young people in our county that are working to raise awareness and support for queer issues in their schools and the community. Let's take a look at some highlights from this year's event.
To speak to you from my heart, which is what I'm best at. I'm not good at notes, I'm not good at writing speeches, but I am good at speaking from my heart. And I'm here to talk to you this evening about the folks that you're not going to see, about the ones that didn't make it to this stage. I'm here to speak to you about those not present in this room, not present in their families, not present in their schools anymore. Those unsung heroes, both those that have taken their own lives or those who have been harmed in the pursuit of their authenticity, and those who are not quite ready to step out yet. We want to take a moment to hold space for all of those beautiful, courageous individuals. What I know is that for every voice that we do hear, there are hundreds that we don't. So I'm going to ask you tonight just to have the courage to listen between the cracks, just to have the courage to listen for the silence, and just see who it is that you can listen to more deeply. And it might just be your kids, it might just be your mom, it might just be your immediate family, or it might be some of the students in the hallway, maybe some of your friends. I'm just inviting you. I'm inviting you to listen to each other. I'm inviting you to take somebody to heart, not just say, hey, how you doing, and let them pass, but just to say, hey, how are you doing? And really take the time to do that sincerely. Outside of the context of LGBTIQQA and any number of other letters we may have picked up along the way, this theme makes sense. People are people. And especially in times like this, with the political climate where it is, with the economic climate where it is, we're all just doing the best we can. And I know we've all seen that. We've all seen that very poignant flyer, I trust, that says gay agenda, And then it says, like making dinner and, paying the bills. And that's real. It's not maybe on most of our everyday mind of fighting for equality per se, of pushing forward on the movement, but it is on our daily minds to live the healthiest, happiest, most valued and valuable lives that we possibly can. And that, if there's anything that we want to put forth as the gay agenda, let it be authenticity. Let it be happiness, let it be health, let it be wholeness, and let it be courage. Because we know that intimately. Thank you for being here and for celebrating with us.
Now Jessica Vo has your video community calendar.
Thanks, Deanna. I'm here at Radani Farms in the North Coast, and as you can see, there's a lot of pumpkins. And to start off the fall season, we have a whole lot of activities going on. The Pacific Rim Film Festival is back. This annual festival plays a variety of international movies by filmmakers spanning the Pacific Rim, like Japan, New Zealand, India, and Mexico. All movie shows are free for 6 days from October 14th through the 19th. For showtimes and locations, just visit pacificrim.org. Fall season means big surf. The annual O'Neill Cold Water Classics will return to Santa Cruz from October 26th through the 30th. The water series shows off some of the world's best competitors. Check out o'neill.com/CWC for more information. And to celebrate Halloween at the end of the month, ride a steam ghost train to Bear Mountain through a haunted redwood forest in Felton. You'll relive the legend of Sleepy Hollow. Visit roaringcamp.com for details. Also, Halloween weekend, the Capitola Village Children's Halloween Parade will take place. Join goblins, refreshments, and pumpkin painting on October 30th at 2 p.m. For more information, just go to capitolasoquelchamber.com. And that wraps up the upcoming events. To learn more information about these events and other ways to support your community, you can check out our website. Just go to communitytv.org and click on the community calendar link. You can also follow us on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/CTV Santa Cruz County, and make sure you follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/CTV Santa Cruz. I'm Jessica Vo, and thank you for watching your video community calendar.
Thanks to all the staff and volunteers of Community Television of Santa Cruz County. Tune in to Community Express each month, where we look at issues impacting the United States and California, but especially Santa Cruz County. I'm Deanna Zachary. Thank you for watching.